We'll- So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our faith team meeting of the Earthville Network. And we're really happy to have with us some speakers today that will get us on our path of action. So I want to start today with first a little bit of reflection, a centering few words. I've asked Jean Bundy, who is now our art team lead. And this is in what you see in front of you here is a piece of art that she has put together painted here for us, not just for us, but for all of us to reflect on. And I will do a chalice lighting while she gives us some centering words about it. Jean?
Okay, so hi everybody. I won't mention our new art committee is booming. The last week it's unbelievable. So this is a painting. This is a painting that's in the show in Anchorage. It's also been shown down in Chelsea in New York. So it's about the ambivalence and the tug of war between the environment and the life's production to stay. So I'll just read this and then I'll go because I'm doing an interview this afternoon. So this is called The Paradox of Productivity in the Age of Climate Change. Anchorage has to, can everybody hear me? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Anchorage has to import 95% of its food, causing lots of barge traffic through the North Pacific, which is evidencing warmer acidic waters, all affecting sea life. The second Arctic Arts Conference was held in Rovaniemi, Finland in June of 2019, where global warming and the tug of war between mineral production and indigenous lifestyles are ongoing. There'll be another one in 2022. Sami, like Alaska natives, battle modernity, holding on to herding and selling wares to gift shops. At the Helsinki airport, I saw a shop display wooden reindeer with genuine pelts. Like Scandinavian towns, Anchorage, which experienced a summer of drought and a surrounding forest fires, has environmental issues too. Moose and bears also compete with development. And that's it. So that was my,
Thank you.
This is
Thank you, Jean.
See you later.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jean, in Alaska. Thank you.
Oh, thank you,
All right.
Todd. Thank
Bye,
you.
Jean. Thank you.
More to come.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you again. And I'm going to just preview our agenda just real quickly for today. And while I'm talking, you might want to introduce yourself in the chat, where you're from or what faith tradition you're from in the chat, so we can see where everybody's coming from. We're going to spend, as you've seen in the agenda, what's been sent out, our focus today is really to work on organizing our faith community for action. So Todd is really going to be facilitating a discussion on that. We're going to have also talk with a couple of folks that are taking some action. Nancy Lawrence and Reverend Brooks Brent will talk about what they're doing in their faith tradition at this point, give you some ideas. Reverend Abby from Mohawk from Green Faith will talk with us a little bit about opportunities to engage in the March 11th Global Day of Action. And also we have Earth Month coming up. So we'll be talking about these as hooks about doing some of our work. Then we will have an opportunity to break into groups. We'll come back and I want to find out what your questions still are and start to put some action steps in place. So that's kind of the outline for today. So I want to invite Todd in. First of all, and thank you all for, I'm learning a lot about Zoom, and I actually learned I could ask some questions in doing a registration. This is the first time I've done that. So some of you who registered right at the beginning didn't have that opportunity, but a few people, some of them did. So Todd, to kind of get things started, I just did want to, maybe we can both be spotlighted at the same time, bring Todd into this, is about, number one is sort of timeline, to maybe kind of talk about what is our timeline, kind of moving forward. We have maybe some points in, April and August, so that we have a frame of reference for the work that we're doing. There were several questions actually that are more programmatic in nature, like what are our issue priorities? How can we be bipartisan in nature? And what's on the horizon right after the recovery bill is passed? So maybe we can weave that into some of your comments as you go forward. But the faith team has been sort of, we've had just a couple of meetings, and now we're at a point of really recentering ourselves and working in a different manner. And so Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of jumpstart that, and then we'll have some discussion. This will be about 15 minutes, and then we'll go into some Q&A, and then invite in our other discussants before we go into the break. Thanks.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Lavona and Nancy and everyone that's been, and Reverend Rushinda, for all the hard work y'all are doing already on the faith team. And thank you all for being here and for your past participation and your interest in this. Just to frame it a little bit, I came into this movement about 4 years ago, and I was panicked at the absence of federal legislative strategy, and then in the absence of a coalition ground game to pursue Congress and make policy happen. So everything I've been doing since then is to try to help make that happen. The main thing that threw me into action was looking at the timeline and the trajectory that we're facing, and realizing that it was our pollution right now. It's been our pollution for the last several decades, but we're now in that moment where literally it's our pollution that is going to push things over a cliff and leave our children and grandchildren with a decimated planet. To speak in terms of religious terminology, the love of money of 100 corporations and man generally is destroying paradise. So what I see is really an emergency organizing necessity that we have to break from all of the regular approaches that we've taken in the past, and because the status quo has not saved us. It has not broken through the resistance. And so even though the mojo is in motion in a whole new way now, the fact of the matter is that we have not bent any of the trajectories. And frankly, a lot of what's being proposed right now is a lot of spending, a lot of money, but still no one's talking about mandates on polluters. And I still don't see an infrastructure, just a bare bones infrastructure, the mechanical infrastructure of a national coalition that would work in tandem simultaneously across congressional districts, speak with a unified voice, and in that way have potentially enough power to really force the powers that be to take bold action that would be measurable, and that we would see clear accountability. And so my faith, my spirituality has brought me to this activism at the end of doing several other big pushes on immigration and the LGBT movement. And I feel the spirit of the earth calling me to this last battle. And I've put everything else in my life aside, my career, my financial well-being of the future, because I'm literally panicked and I feel like nothing else is more important. So the reason the faith community to me is a linchpin in this, or could be a linchpin in this, is because this community is embedded in these ideas. You're embedded in your communities. And it's really only through community action in the congressional level that we will have enough influence on elected officials to maybe overcome the power of the opposition, big oil, big ag, big pharma. And they don't do sign-on letters and civil society organizing and endless hours on Zoom and meetings. They're much more efficient in how they wrap things around their fingers and make sure that they control the game. So I think we, you, us together, the faith community in particular, has the potential to actually save us. And it might not happen in the next few months. It might be a year or 2 years, maybe 3 or 4. But we have a window of opportunity now to act and push things through and put more pressure on a willing administration. But we need to build the infrastructure. And everyone wants to rush to sign-on letters and to calling your congressperson. And it's like, if I don't like to use war metaphors, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And it's almost like, we were in the middle of the Civil War, the Revolutionary War rather. And we just said to everybody, all right, go fight the first person you see, or, and that's not a plan. And so we need a cohesive structure. We need to make sure our faith advocacy organizations are united and working on a plan. And sometimes that means that the grassroots has to forge that unity and to bring those players at the higher levels together. And so I think we have the power. When I say we, I'm talking about you all. The faith community has the power, the moral authority to convene and to bring leaders together and hold them accountable, and also then to organize within your communities. And so that's my plea, is for us to figure out, to really put our thinking caps on together and to figure out how we're going to break the status quo, break free of the mold of these organizing meetings that are half the time a lot of, entertainment and things to keep people happy. I'm less worried about that. I'm more worried about saving our children's future than my own happiness and my own ease of organizing. And we all know that the status quo has all these built-in entrenched resistance. People get in jobs, they want to keep those careers. They get in positions of authority and they don't want to rock the boat. We need the folks who are willing to rock the boat. And we need to rock the boat to save the world for our children. And so it's a sort of a plea to find a new level of collaborative organizing and to go in deep into the district organizing through the adopted district. And so we have 3 asks today, as I'm pouring it on thick emotionally, I know. One is to join a broader core team of this faith team. So we have Lavona and Rashunda and Brooks, and Reverend Malcolm's been involved a lot. And so there's a handful of people, but we want to expand that. And the role, if you join that expanded working group, would be to help us really identify leads in your state, to help organize to the by congressional district, to find others to adopt their congressional district, to identify organizations that might not be the highest tier organizations, but are still very powerful. I've heard names like the Board of Church and Society mentioned, the United Methodist Women, Earth Core Group. So these kinds of lesser known entities in the outside world that are still players in your communities, to identify those groups and reach out to them, all as we're trying to weave this basket together. But we just, we need more capacity, more people helping us at that sort of interim management level, who have more time and that are willing to really, rattle the cages and shake the bushes to find the right people and bring them into the fold. So that's one ask, to join this working group team. And we're still figuring out how we'll staff that. But so if you're a great leader, if you're a good organizer, we need your help. So that's one level of ask for today. And then we're going to brainstorm a little bit in the chat, if you feel like it, to list organizations that you're aware of with that middle level of reach, but that is sort of deeply active groups that we might not be thinking of yet. Just put them in the chat. Let's just get the juices flowing in terms of our brainstorming, which will continue.
Just a time check, Todd. You have about a minute remaining.
Oh, that's 15 minutes. All right. So the other piece which you know about is to adopt your district directly, and hope if somebody can put in the chat that volunteer form, the short one if you have it. And maybe folks could raise their hand if you're interested in any of these things. And then the third is to go forward in your places of worship and to start organizing a community climate group, and just to find how you can get word out to your faith's congregation or whatever the denomination is, who within that organization has access to the email list and that sends out the newsletter or does the pamphlet for the service, so that you can get a block in there and saying, please join us for a meeting that I'm hosting on Zoom from our community. And if you're interested in saving the planet for your children, please join us for an organizing meeting. And you're looking for the folks that run the PTA or that run the hair salon maybe, or, we got to really start thinking, who has a voice in your community that might know the right people? And then if we get all those people together, and by in mid-March, end of March, we start to actually have those meetings, that's, I think, where we're going to have real value added that's not yet happening. And those people, the mayor's wife or the chief fundraiser for your congressional candidate who ran their campaign, these kinds of brainstorm, once you bring those people together, the people who know people in your community, you bring them together and then just sit down with them and say, who do we know? Who knows who? And do this mapping exercise of who knows who. And you'll start to see that people know people. And that's the level of organizing that I'm hoping we can get moving. And so I guess since we're looking at timeframes, there's frankly not much more to it unless I just keep pouring it on thick. But maybe I'll stop there and we'll look at the chat. I wanted to try to make it be interactive, but I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is for everything. But I did want us to do some, raise your hand if you want to be more actively involved in the working group. So if folks know how to do that.
And I'm going to do a poll also that'll have some options on there, and we definitely will follow up. But I would love to have an idea if there are, a few folks, especially at that sort of organizational level, that would come together. And that would mean like maybe for a while on a weekly basis. Right now we're meeting at Mondays Eastern time at about 3:30, and it would be for about an hour. So it would be maybe a commitment of a couple hours a week. And some of you have indicated, quite a few hours a week. I'm really excited about that. And some of this I think will be episodic. There's going to be a lot of work at the front end and kind of getting things up. And then there are specific tasks that we'll be looking at. We have some follow-up with volunteers, for example, who have offered to do work. So I'm looking for somebody specifically on that, and also, some other things. So I will do that little poll at one point, and that will catch us with the names, of them, if I've done this right. So, and we will have a follow-up survey that will also about having these regular, we agreed we wanted to have monthly meetings with the whole community, kind of coming together. And then obviously there's going to be work groups that just need to work on particular tasks. So keep that in mind as well. So when we send that survey out, we'll be trying to find out when's the best time for everybody to meet. And
thank you, everyone. People are starting to put things in the ideas, and we're definitely in touch with Interfaith Power and Light and Creation Justice Ministries and Green Faith. And I think some of those folks will be speaking today. But the trick we have is a window of opportunity where we need leadership from the bottom and we need leadership from the top on that level. And so if you're involved with those organizations, please feel free to have those conversations internally And we need everybody sort of tugging and pulling us all together. And like, who runs the local Boy Scouts troop, and who runs the Bible study group, and all these kinds of folks. Does anyone on the call feel like they're interested in that level of the working group, joining Lavona and the others?
Oh, and Todd, there's a specific question about the relationship with the Poor People's Campaign.
All right, great. So we have Terry, Peter Sajinko. Hi, Peter. Great to see you. Anyone else raising their hand? Just curious, just to try to get.
They do have the function. Maybe it would help to use the function under participants where you can rate, or now I think they moved it. It's in reaction now. If you go to at the bottom of the bar, if you're on a computer or a laptop, I don't know about an iPad, but it's a raised hand. Maybe that, or the thumbs up will work too. Woo, okay, great.
Oh, wonderful. So we'll just keep those up for a minute while folks take note. David Krantz, Terry Michaud, Peter already raised his hand.
Nancy, are you able to get some of those written down?
I'm writing a little bit, yeah.
Great, thanks a lot.
I can't see them all, but.
So it looks like, yeah, Terry, Marion, Peter, Dawn Lewis. And I see David Krantz and David Kays and Terry McChowd. Great, wonderful. And as we transition, maybe I will try to bring up that poll. What I would like next, just kind of queue up here, is have Nancy and Reverend Brooks talk about what they're doing sort of to bring this work and to their faith community. So think also about if even within this group, our group that you might want to bring together, like the Quakers or the Unitarians might want to get together, or the Jewish community get together to do some brainstorming as well. And we can facilitate that. So I'm going to turn it over to maybe Brooks first, Reverend Brooks Brent from the United Church of Christ.
There,
I'll
thanks
give
so
you
much.
about 2 minutes, and then I do want to open it up to some discussion after.
Good, that's what I was hoping. I would love to talk. Okay, great. Hear people's thoughts. Wonderful.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. I'll just share a couple of few things, and maybe as an opening metaphor, I'll just use a church group that I met with earlier today. It was a green team that was in crisis. They were trying to persuade all the members of their church to jump on board with a particular campaign, and we tried to troubleshoot it, and eventually I said, well, maybe that's not the right goal. Maybe this isn't where we need to be spending our time and energies. And I feel like in many ways that's a question to be raised on a broader scale for my case, church members throughout our denomination, is that we've got a problem with a timeline, and maybe the right thing to do is to think carefully about who our audience is and where we want to devote our energies. And I think that can mean, having a strategy. For us, that's meant having a strategy for activists, people who are already there, and then having a strategy that's complementary at the same time, but for a broader audience. And so basically, seeing that there was opportunities on the horizon, with Congress and pushing for climate legislation, we first tried to plant some seeds, hold webinars on the possibilities in Congress and what faith communities can do. We actually also had a webinar on how not to be an individual in seeking to address climate change, because that's we wanted to encourage people to think about coming together to act collectively. So we did that to plant the seeds. And now the next stage for us is to kind of repurpose some of our organizations for doing advocacy around Congress. And so for us, that means there's a group of over 50 volunteers that had come together digitally via Zoom and on a regular basis during the election to turn out environmental voters. And so they want to keep going. And so for them, they're going to continue to keep going by gathering, once a month to do advocacy while they gather online. And so they'll be given suggested actions for real pieces of climate legislation that they can advocate for while they share in fellowship and community together. And these are people throughout the country that felt like, I think in some cases, often isolated and lonely in the struggle for climate justice, but they found each other and they enjoy each other's company as they do something they feel is real and concrete. And so we know that those are activists who are ready to act. And so that's a bit about our strategy. I've probably taken my 2 minutes.
And I just want to mention a couple of things you did, or maybe you said it and I'll just amplify it, is as a denominational, the person, you're the environmental.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm the environmental justice minister for the UCC, the United Church of Christ.
And you invited Todd to be on a webinar initially, so that exposed them. And then you invited me back with Brenna about adopted district to a smaller group of folks that were able to kind of focus in on it. And I'm happy to say that the New Hampshire church in the 2nd district, the congregation decided to adopt a district. And so this, this can work. So Nancy, let's turn it over to you and hear about the Catholics.
Well, I come from the Metro New York Catholic Climate Movement, and there are several of us on our steering committee that are part of this project and feel really committed to it, partly because of Todd's energy and enthusiasm for it, but also because we see the need for the urgency and the window of opportunity that we have right now with the Biden administration. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this moment, I would say. So we also feel like there's a need to push for the significant changes that Todd was talking about, because certainly the Biden administration is going to get pushed from the other side on this issue. And I like to think of us as like a pebble thrown in the water that ripples out, and that each one of us is that pebble, and that the rippling is all of our networks that we're part of. And, Todd mentioned a few. The Catholics have a lot of networks. And there are some people who are joining us today that have indicated a lot of enthusiasm for this project, that are connected to Pax Christi and the Franciscans, and the people that are on our steering committee here as well in Metro New York Catholic Climate Movement. So, we're just kind of trying to go person by person and thinking of the structures that we're part of and who can we outreach to. And one of the things that we're planning is a webinar for Catholics that would start with Catholic social teaching and just kind of go into the foundations of our church that talk about why would advocacy be a part of our faith. And certainly we have Pope Francis that we can, and Laudato Si, that we can lean on in terms of that as well. So that's kind of where we're at this point. The webinar we're planning it for the 3rd week in March. And if any of the Catholics are on this call that I haven't been in touch with, I'll put my email in the chat and we'll certainly get in touch with you.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, so I want to plant that seed about some of us folks who are from other faith traditions that might want to do the kind of thing Nancy is talking about, is to gather those folks together to start planning. And I know some of the Quakers have talked maybe about that, and I've been asked about the Unitarians as well. So that's a beginning way to sort of jumpstart things and do some brainstorming about like those groups within our denominations, but also, as Todd's been talking about, outside. So I'd like to open it up to some questions now before we go on to the next part. I think everyone has lowered their hands from the previous voting period. So if you want to use the raising hand if you want to speak, or if there's a question, Nancy will be monitoring if you put something there. And I see Reverend Terry Ellen. First, you just put your hand up. Did you want to speak, Terry?
And
I just still had it up from before. I didn't know enough to put it down. So, but I will say I put it in the chat. I'll just say very briefly that this spring really is an extraordinary opportunity for climate because of the reconciliation process in Congress, and that really is huge. That's just huge, and that's going to
Yeah.
come up right after the COVID bill. So I agree absolutely with what Nancy was saying about pushing the Biden administration, but it seems to me pretty clear our agenda is set. How we go about doing it, we got to work out. But with that possibility this spring up through August, to me, it's just clear what we got to be working on. Thanks.
Thanks for those comments, Terry.
And
Rachel.
I just wanted to pose a question while everyone's, before you, as you're sharing your other questions, to give us your thoughts on, like, how can we unite bigger, better, faster? What more can we do to weave ourselves together to speak as one? That, to me, this is a strategic imperative. We don't have the power we need splittered like we are. So the most important thing we could all figure out together is how can we unite more formally and structurally, so that we build this infrastructure and we can communicate and act as one. That's a very tricky thing, I know. So that's why I'm posing this big challenge to us. That's the challenge we face if we really want to succeed. And I just want to add that in the budget reconciliation, they're saying that we can't get mandates, but if we tied mandates to the tax code and required the industries to reduce their greenhouse gases on a schedule and tie that to their ability to take their tax deductions, we could have mandates in this budget reconciliation process, but I don't believe there's an appetite for that. So that's sort of an aside. I don't want to get stuck into policy conversations at all, because it's really the mechanics of our organizing that we need to figure out most importantly. Thank you.
Okay, so there was,
Ivona,
yes.
there is a question for Todd about the relationship. Have we outreach to the Poor People's Campaign?
Yes, and we had Dr. Liz on the symposium, and I don't think we've had a subsequent conversation with her yet, although she's on the list for us to communicate with.
Rachel, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So I'm trying to see concretely how this would work. Let's say that a congregation says, yes, we'll let you promote people in our congregation who want to come and see a senator or congressman. So let's suppose that my congregation said, okay, as long as you do it, as individuals, we'll put in our newsletter that you're having an organizing meeting for those who want to go, and we'll be arm's length against the policy. So when we walk into the congressman's office and when we go around, and we're supposed to be using our faith to show how important the issue is, that a person of faith wants to come. Hello, I am Rachel, a person of faith. My synagogue is blah, blah, blah. I'm interested in this policy, and I hope you sign this bill. Well, am I representing the congregation?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
The congregation who's letting me do this stuff as an individual. And if I'm doing it as an individual, you can tell I'm Jewish. I'm getting very Talmudic here. But anyway, and so if I'm an individual and I'm doing it as an individual, doesn't that take away some of the veneer, the power, the moral power, the inevitable correctness of this policy? I mean, if I had a pope, it would be very easy for me, I think. I could march in there with a book and turn to the page and say, look, here it is, and I represent Catholic Church so-and-so. So I'm a little mystified about how I would present myself.
Well,
Mhm.
I'd like to just mention it, because the Unitarian Universalists, they have a advocacy corps that goes to Capitol Hill every month. They were doing that for 4 years. And, you know, what we go on and who we represent is really our values. We talk about our principles and our values. And we get away from, we don't represent our church or the denomination, but our faith principles. And, you know, a lot of faith, you know, organizations are very different. You know, the Catholics are very different than the Unitarians, and the Jewish from, you know, maybe the Episcopals. So it may be different things that drive what you say and how you say it. But I know that the Jewish community, and they have also a monthly kind of advocacy corps as well, Marilla Goldsmith, and we work together very closely. But we're able to say that our faith brings us here. And we're doing, I know some people sometimes are concerned about 501c3 status, et cetera, and we can talk about and educate ourselves more on that at a later time. But yes, you can lobby even on a particular bill up to a certain point, but we can always be educating, and we're always sharing our stories. And you talk about what's, how it impacts our community. And we are storytellers, and we have to use our moral voice. We talked last time about using our moral muscle and exercising that, and as a community, learning how to do that well. Todd, did you want to say something? Then Doris Marlin has her hand up.
No, just whoever's next.
Okay, Doris.
Hi, you caught me with a bite of lunch in my mouth.
Of course. Hi, Doris.
I don't know why thank you. I don't know why my screen isn't sharing, but you've asked for ideas, and for about 2 years, a group of Unitarians, which has now stretched to 42 states and about 150 congregations, has been reaching out to strengthen local climate commitments. And the most basic idea of it, because there are many layers to it, is to reach out to your climate mayor, who has pledged to reduce the community's greenhouse gases in accordance with the Paris Climate Agreement, and ask that mayor and the whole city council, how's it going? What are we on track to do? Are we going to hit a 25% reduction by the year 2025? And the answer is probably no. So you and your friends, whatever denomination they're in, whatever organization they're in, you work together to roll up your sleeves with your community, with your elected representatives, and build in stronger climate commitments. And you work together on implementing it and oversight. It takes the resolutions of a climate emergency and puts pen to paper and actually into implementation to bring down your community's emissions, along with making sure you do that with justice and equity in mind. Thank you.
And can you tie that into, I mean, in just like 30 seconds, also about federal legislation? Because we are all here to advance federal legislation, and so how we bring that.
Well, I can just give an example that is actually sort of moving along pretty well. And the example would be, for those who are familiar with the drawdown, would be refrigerant management. Well, prior to having a cooperative administration, that was going nowhere in the US. So you could lobby locally and say, what are we doing locally for refrigerant management? And then you network throughout the state to get a state policy, and then you network throughout the country to get national policy. So that would be a very simplistic example, but pick your cause and expand it throughout your city, your region, your state, to strengthen that policy on the federal level.
Thanks, Doris. Yeah, and our members of Congress always like to hear the local stories. How does it affect you locally? We're going to take one more question before we segue into our next part of the discussion. And I see Peter Sirjenko. Hi, Peter. I should have asked folks, where are you from?
So I'm from Portland, Oregon,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm working with Pastor Rashenda and Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon in this space. And I just want to reflect back that Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon has been doing legislative advocacy for a long time. We also are the Oregon Interfaith Power and Light affiliate. So we do work on an interfaith basis, especially in the creation justice space is how we refer to it. I think it's actually really important to speak as broadly for your organization as you can. And one of the things that we bring to our legislative advocacy at the state level is the fact that we're representing denominational members and congregational members that number in the hundreds of thousands. And legislators need to hear that you're part of an organization that is widespread and that has true voting influence. And I'd say the same thing for nationally. I've participated in Interfaith Power and Light's lobby days at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and it's the same kind of thing. We are speaking from values, we're speaking from shared values across faith traditions, and showing that and showing, again, sort of the numbers and the scope of membership and the scope and depth of commitment to these priorities is what gives the lobbying a special power. So kind of going back to what Reverend Brooks said, I think there's a new organizing paradigm in what Todd has said that we need to figure out real quick. And it's finding the people who are motivated to go and speak and organizing that sort of 1, 2, 3, 4% of the most committed and getting them together in a true interfaith movement.
Well said. Thank you, Peter. Very good. I'd like to segue now into sort of the next part about this. And this is a little bit on the short term, talking about our timeline, is that we have opportunities to advance this work with, find hooks, in terms of what we're doing. And so we can kind of be exercising our organizational muscle and maybe taking the opportunity also of adopting a district real soon, because there are some events coming up. For the faith community, Earth Month, of course, is a really important time. We always are doing something around that. The president has a summit on the 22nd, and integrating doing these actions and going to speak to our members of Congress as part of those actions is something that we can offer. And I want to introduce to you one of our partners from Green Faith, Reverend Abby. Reverend Abby, I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce your last name correctly, Mohawk, if you can correct me on that, but she's the Director of Education and Training. And the very next thing that's really coming up is on March 11th, and which many of you know about and are participating already. It is the it's a global day of action. And I think this is going to really push for the whole year. We're going to have opportunities. But here you have an event that you can organize around, and gives you an excuse in your congregation, or faith community, to do something. And so maybe you can tell us, Abby, how we can do something with our federal legislative lens on.
Yeah, great. So let me tell you a little bit more about the Global Day of Action and then how you can join us in your particular district. So as we all know, the world is sacred and also at risk, and that more and more people of faith and of not faith are experiencing climate change and climate-fueled disasters. And at the heart of all of the dangers that we face are destructive power structures, ineffective and immoral governments, extractive industries, and fundamentalist or extreme religions. And those affect people all around the globe. I'm calling in from Northeast rural Texas, where we've seen very recently really ineffective government responses to the effects of climate change. And that unholy alliance is wreaking climate devastation and really devastation in lots of other ways. At Green Faith, we do climate work. So as we face conditions that tempt us to turn away in despair, our faith, each of us, no matter what our tradition, can and must do much more. The world is crying out for change. So diverse grassroots of people of faith all over the world are coming together to demand real solutions, and calling out to government leaders to particularly demand climate answers and responses. And on March 11th, we're kicking off a new era of global multi-faith climate action. We have actions planned all over the world. And they're little and big and online and in person based on what's safe around COVID. And some of you have heard about some of those actions already. But it would be great if each of you would target your districts and district leaders to really take action and be a part of this global day of action. We've been calling it Sacred People, Sacred Earth, because we believe that all people and this whole planet is sacred, and that our faith calls us to fight on behalf of each other and on the planet. So you can, so we have colleagues and organizers who are taking signs to their politicians in their districts to do a public action. Others are having like a letter writing campaign around a particular climate issue in their district. But people have been thinking very creatively about how to do that. And so I want to invite each of you to be a part of this global day of action, which is in less than 2 weeks, but there's still time to plan. So I'm going to drop in the chat an organizing call that we're doing on March 3rd, which will actually happen at 3 different times during the day. But it's the same call, and it's a place for you to brainstorm what you might want to do with your government leaders, what particular issues you want to take on in your region, and to take action as people of faith. So here's the link in the chat, and I'm really grateful to be with all of you.
So this gives us a hook or an opportunity, and I've been thinking about there's about 71 or 72 new members of Congress. So if you're from also, especially from maybe a state or district where you have a new member, this is a great opportunity to create relationships, because this work is about relationships. And so you could, even though we don't have the Earth Bill right now or a whole package to say, hey, this is what we're bringing, you can talk from your faith. There are bills that you can be talking about that we have supported, and you can be saying that we want to see these reintroduced, or that find a particular bill that you want to speak to. So you could organize around that, even for something like this. And then Todd, in April, are we not going to be determined, but we think that we may have an ask at that point, so that around the time of Earth Month and around the 22nd, we may be trying to organize folks to go to the Hill. Is that correct?
Yes. So, various groups have demands in motion. There's U.S. Climate Action Network, there's the Green New Deal Table, there's Food and Water Watch and their coalition, and Environmental Defense Fund and their coalition. So, and a lot of them have long documents. So we're asking everyone to try to come up with a top 10 list. And then we'll look at these top 10 lists and see if we can't come up with a joint top 10 list. That's my dream. Until we have a shared demand that we are all asking for, it's way too scattershot. And you don't know, what the deliverable is, what the clear ask is. So this is all part of the unfortunate state of the organizing framework. It just it's not there. But all that is in motion and happening. So just to reiterate, I know I've said this before, the reason for the adopted district model is because we want to have a person and a name and an organization, ideally, in each district that's identified as the point person, so we can send other people who are interested. It's to open the church doors and to take what's happening on the inside so passionately and make it public and transparent, so that all the other people who want to join someone know where to go. Like right now, where would there's no center list of, and so we're hoping that with Green Faith, maybe Abby, maybe we can formalize through your process and say, okay, who's in charge of this district? We just need a name on the board. And that way we could say, you don't have to do everything, but we have to be the conduit and the centerpiece for the information flow, that center. And so we really need to put that structure in place. It's like the old phone chains. And that way we're not just doing one-off events like in March, but we use these events to create the structure that we will then use as the demands become more apparent. And I think I've probably said this over and over, so maybe it's clear, but I'm just hoping to make it infrastructure. We're thinking about building highways and roads and solar, but we need movement infrastructure. So all right, I'll stop there.
But yeah, all these things do add up, and creating those relationships so that we're ready to hit the ground running is really very important. Let's see, is there any we're going to segue into the next part of our meeting. And I think one of the things I'm going to do, I see that a couple of people are rolling off. I'm putting in the chat my email address also if you need to follow up. So while we're now kind of organizing to go into breakout groups to talk about some of these things, and one of the things that, Todd did mention, maybe charged us with, was what more can we do to unite, as one. So we're going to go into groups of about 3 or 4 folks. And one of the outcomes of this is, what next steps can you take in terms of this work, if you are able and willing? And what questions are coming up now that you've heard all this? What tools do you need? What do you need from us? I would really like to know, what would be helpful, so coming back. And so we'll dig a little bit deeper during that time, and then we'll come back, kind of quick report out. We'll do a little bit in the group. I'm going to put up, though, while we make the breakout rooms, I am going to try to launch this first time here with this poll. And there's 2 questions. Let's see if it works. Does anybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, but I see that it says that it's closing in 6 seconds. Could that be? No, it's going the other direction. Never mind. So there should be 2 questions there, and you can all see that. So just take a minute to read all of that, and you can vote on multiple things, and we'll see how we're doing on the breakout rooms here.
And then in the breakout, in terms of next steps, I had a list of 1, find out who will send out the email to the congregation. You got to figure out who that is, who has the list that will let you email and invite everybody to a Zoom. Schedule that Zoom, hold that meeting, and then at that meeting, get everybody to list all the groups that they're connected to. The smallest little, whatever group that they're working on, the neighborhood watch group. And then that becomes your target list for your outreach. So I'm just floating that as, ideas of next steps.
Great. Okay. I'm going to close the poll. See if I can figure this out.
Already? You could probably leave it open a little bit, or
okay.
People already voted?
A minute and a half here. I'll give it another 15 or so minutes. 15 seconds or so. And I'm just preparing our breakout rooms. And once you go into the room, we might find that some people don't join the room, or so we will have to make some adjustments initially. And so hold on before you initially start your comment, your session. And let's see.
Labona, I'm ready to go with the rooms.
Okay. Should we just, oh, you are? I was doing them. Okay.
Oh, you were? Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind. That's all right.
You told me to do them.
Yeah. I guess I thought I was. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to just exit mine then.
Okay.
Okay. And I was assuming Todd is not going into a room there. So, okay, I'm going to end the poll. We'll share it, and then we'll vamoose. Let's see. I'm going to share results. Is this working?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's-
Let's see, can I open that? I can't seem to make it any bigger. But so as individuals, so a lot of people are here as individuals. They want to learn how to engage in this effort and contribute as best they can. So that's the largest percentage, 38% of folks. And then we have about 4 folks. So about 21 people out of the 30 so folks seem to have voted, but we have representing my congregation, a few, so then that's about equally. And then on the second question about what you want help with, yeah, here we go. The biggest one, coalition building. I want to help with coalition building. That's great. And we've got a lot of folks about help with interfaith team organizing. Yay. Looking good there. And smattering across those other areas. Very good. Okay, so I think we are now perfectly on time. I can't believe this. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that.
24% of people there for other reasons. So that's an interesting question. I got to write us and let us know what those are.
Yeah, so I think that'll help inform when we do the next survey is kind of digging that out. Yeah, getting at that better. And just want to mention to folks too that we were, Corinna Gore and I have talked about, having these monthly meetings, and like every other one would have a sort of like the last one, maybe not as deep as that one, but some of that why sort of like the moral lens, like on the legislation, for example. So, we may have somebody from the Washington Religious Staff Committee come and talk to us about some specific pieces of these legislations that we are considering, and how do we talk about that from a faith perspective. So that's that exercising that moral muscle when we go and talk. So in that kind of programming, that'd be helpful. Okay, Greg, are you ready to take us off?
Yeah, how much time do you want?
Okay, well, we'll let them know in 12 minutes and we'll be back in 15, and then 15 minutes of wrap up. We'll kind of do action steps and other questions. When you come back, if you want to put some of your thoughts in the chat, but if we have a few questions that we can get answered right here, we will take a few questions. But I want to be sure we have some action steps moving forward. So you'll be back here in 15 minutes, 14 minutes. Okay.
Right. All right, there should be a group of us left.
Rashinda, do you want to go
Hi,
to
Margaret.
Hold on a second. I need to, Margaret.
And Nancy? That's a group right there.
I just want to say hi to Margaret. I read your name all the time, but I don't get to see her. Hi, hello.
Margaret, would you like to be in a group? I can send you.
And Nancy, Margaret,
Sure.
and to be a group?
Sure.
I can join a group if that's helpful. I am babysitting my grandson today, so
Nice.
I
Nice
am
to see you.
not necessarily as available, especially since I think he's up from his nap, which means he may need a cleanup. Still working on the potty training.
So I do
That
want to
reminds
be a
me,
part
I
of.
forgot to put this on
Nancy wants
pause,
to go to
the
a group,
recording.
Greg.
Put me in a group.
Okay,
I'll go in.
But yeah,
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Todd has not been a fan every time.
Oh, I'm breaking up or I can't hear you.
Ivana, your connection is bad.
I think she's frozen. Yeah.
Oh, Lavona's frozen, not me. Oh, all right.
No,
Lavona
is freezing.
but I do want to say hurrah, Todd. I think breakout groups are indeed just so helpful, and we hear each other and we hear ourselves and each other, and then we can find that common wonderful language together. So yeah.
I know, now you're lobbying me about them, but I already said I was a convert and I'm still being lobbied. I love it. So that's that lobbying spirit that we love. All right, well, I just want to say I'm grateful for my breakout group real quick. And meeting Marion, who's now, I think, leaning into adopting Michigan, and then just hearing what this conversation sparked in terms of people's thought process and the groups that they know and the political context they have. And one thing I just wanted to say that you're going about this from a faith community, but we're not suggesting that you organize only within your faith environments at all. To the contrary, use that as a centerpiece perhaps, but if you have the political activism connections and you've been involved in other campaigns, and those are the folks, you know, that we want to draw into this community work.
If I can just piggyback off that a little bit, there's really that couple of things, this Lavona still stuck, you know, one, organizing as a person of faith, just you are who you are. And exactly like Todd said, moving into the community, it can be 350, it can be definitely somebody completely unaffiliated with faith values, but as a person of faith, you also have that set of connections and that sort of moral conversations that can come up. So the wonderful thing about this sort of faith team is it's both and, either or, depending on where you find yourself. And there's Lavona.
So I just know if anyone came out of that feeling like they're rejuvenated and want to add more, but district, we're looking for state leads for each state. And we have about just so you know, we have 77 districts adopted in 26 states already. If you weren't on our last calls, you know, we have 2 monthly calls, one the second Saturday and one the fourth Wednesday. The second Saturday is more on policy, and then the fourth Wednesday is on building our network infrastructure. But if anyone felt called after that breakout to be a state lead, that would be wonderful. And your role there is to help find people to adopt the districts within your state. And you know, just because you are a lead doesn't mean you have to do it all yourself. To the contrary, we're looking for multiple leads at multiple levels. And if you step forward now and you need to step back later, that's never a problem. So Peter, go ahead.
Yeah.
Hey,
No,
Rashenda, oh, sorry. I was
go
going to
ahead.
ask Rashenda if we have agreed as ecumenical ministries to be the state leads. We've talked about it, and I want to do that. And I was looking at our congressional district map, and I think we have committee members in each district. So I feel like we should just go ahead and say yes to this, but I want to check with you. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we are very much working to build each district. We have groups already in each district, and that would be fantastic. Aaron and I, anyway, yes, and yes, that's in process and very much continuing. So
wonderful. Oregon is an example to us all. Anyone else had a question or feeling? Oh, Nancy, go ahead.
So Todd, in my group, there was this really strong feeling that we would all support any effort that you could make, that we could all make, to come up with that top 10 list that you were talking about of all these national organizations coming together and say, what is it that we have in common that we can all advocate for?
Well, so this is a very important role that this working group, the faith working group and the faith team can play, frankly. We're trying to build those relationships, and I wiggled my way into a lot of them, and Atel is bringing us in, and we're on this and that. But getting them to all come together is not a foregone conclusion by any means, even though there seems to be openness to it. And I think faith leaders, if we figured out a little bit more of a strategy, and you all started calling and saying, well, where's the top 10 list? We need it for our this or that. That might help prod that into existence.
Very good. Anybody else want to put their hand up, or if they put
I have a third comment. Rose Walton and a man from 8th Seam. We were talking about individual dots of folks who might want to go and meet with their congressperson on the same idea. And I realized we have mapping software. We can map at the district level who these people are, so we can kind of, and what their interests are and what organizations they belong to. So when a topic gets hot, we know how to pull these people together by district. Otherwise, you've got all kinds of groups showing up at all all times of the year talking about stuff.
Mhm. Thank you, Rachel. Yes, we are interested in the faith mapping, consistent with our other mapping by congressional district. So, but again, we've got to figure out who the teams are and who the people are, and that's the information that would
Yes.
go into any mapping. Anyone else in a breakout group that had a revelation that they want to share or inspiration? No pressure, but it does get us excited. Peter, again, go ahead. You're muted, Peter.
Well, he's
Hit
unmuting
the button,
himself.
right?
There you go.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I just wanted to reflect back that at our state level organizing, we're really trying to do this for the long term and to not be so transactional and to build relationships and to use the Marshall Gans principles of organizing. And that's another, vote for the breakout rooms and for building relationships on a smaller, more personal level. But when Todd was mentioning, we've got a lot of urgent things to do right now, but there's also a long view in the political realities of all this change that needs to happen. And particularly because there's really a cultural shift that needs to happen, and faith leaders are used to speaking about worldview and culture and talking about values. I just want to put out there that it's really important for us to think about that long view together with the short view in our organizing efforts. And that came out of our conversation.
Thank you for that. I think that's really important work that we as a faith community. And I always try to think about too, what is our value added? We can join with a secular group or, et cetera, but why are we doing this work, together as a faith community? And, again, it's different faith traditions, but we have either principles or values or commandments or whatever it might be that are in common. And that's what we need to find that's in common. And when we go and we know members of Congress and staff offices pay more attention actually to faith folks, because number one, they don't see them that often. So if you have a person, a minister that has a collar on or something also, that brings us, it elevates it in a certain way that it very often when we, meet just as secular. So we need to learn to, again, how do we maximize and flex that muscle? I want to mention that I put in the chat a couple of times, a document, a file, meeting prep for your members of Congress. Rashinda has adapted this from another tool. And when I was talking earlier about maybe taking the opportunity to get to know your member of Congress, especially if you have a new one, this is just a little tool to, you can meet with your group and sort of map, do this little task, find out what they're interested in, look at their website, find out what committees they're on. And if this is also something, that level of work about how to do that, that kind of training, that's something personally I'd be real happy to do, as a separate kind of training. And there are other kinds of or groups out there like Green Faith and others that have wonderful training opportunities for people. And we want to curate those if that's something that you're interested actually in doing, because we don't want to recreate the wheel if we don't have to. But if you want some particular technical assistance on it, we can help and provide that in a supportive environment. I think of this as a learning community as well. So
I was just going to ask, is there anyone else? Rosa, did you have anything you wanted to share? I feel like did we give enough opportunity?
If you want to raise your hand, I use that hand thing. It pops up here and I can see much easier if there's anyone. So do we have some next steps for yourselves? Maybe, spend when I blow the candle, I kind of think, okay, just it takes a little reflection. What can I take away from this, or what particular action I might be able to take leaving here? And if you haven't already, maybe that's something you can put in the chat as part of our closing is, what are you going to do next? And I will say, for those of you who are interested in sort of the management, the overall planning that Todd talked about, right now we're meeting on Mondays at 3:30 at 3:30 Eastern time. And depending on the makeup of the group, we can adjust those times. But I will stick with that for a while until we kind of get that group together. So join us, but you have to let me know. I'll send you a link to our Zoom, and I'll put one more time into chat that my email address, and and you have all received probably 4 times in the last 10 days, the link to the the 1-page flyer. And you can use that kind of as your crib notes for all the different links and meetings that we have. So in the last email, just, find it. It says handout, I think, on it.
And somebody asked about a one sheet. There is a one sheet, and we're also working on revisions to our website. Our website is really the digest, and so but there'll be some separate pages for adopted district and the bill package and sort of the new Earth Bill organizing focus. That'll be up in a couple of weeks, and I apologize for that delay. That'll make it easier to explain things. But always feel free to, write it in your own way and communicate in your own way. We're very open, all volunteer. We're not very formalistic, and now is about speed more than it is perfection when it comes to organizing. And I know that's a hard concept for folks to sometimes let go of, but we don't have time for perfect organizing. We need to get to results.
So we just want to make sure you have the tools you need. So please let us know, what you need. And there's a lot of stuff out there. We might have it already, or we can package it in a way that speaks, to the faith community a little bit more. But do please check out that 1-pager that we have. And that's your one-stop shopping for the meetings. And I think that we're actually on schedule. I can't believe it. That's great. Thank you all. I really, I feel always energized when I come together with folks. And for me, that's an important part of this, is being in community with people and sharing and supporting our work for the planet. So I'm going to blow out the candle, and you can think about and put in the chat what your next steps are.
Yes.
And if there's anything also that you need or want, please put that there as well. We will study it and share some of these things with you as well. And I will stay on if anybody just wants to chat further or has, some specific questions. Be happy to stay on for another, 15 or 20 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nan. We do have that, and we'll get that to
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much, everyone. This is very exciting, and I'm grateful you're all here.
Thank you.